But I'm here.
Rita and Hope, if you could turn off your camera and your
Oh, you want us
microphone.
to do that? Okay, I didn't realize you did that purposely. Okay.
Great. So, what does L&D need to do to influence decision makers in the next 12 months? Hi, welcome. If you're here to answer that question and to involve yourself in a scintillating discussion around the future of learning development here in the Caribbean, then you're in the right place. If we haven't met, my name is Francis Wade, and I'm the founder, one of the hosts of Carib HR Forum, which I host with my wife and colleague, Dale Pilgrim Wade, who's also here. And if this is your first time, then you probably may not know that one of the things that we have you do in the very beginning is say hello. And they've already started. I didn't even get to even say hi in the chat. So if you're brand new, just put a hello in the chat. And what I'm going to ask you to do, because this is the first time we're having an L&D session for the entire community, if you could put your flag in the chat. So the way you put your flag is that you pick up an emoji and you go all the way to the bottom of the list of emojis and you add your flag. So I've just added my flag, and the emojis are that kind of smiley face that's in the chat. Just go all the way down and pick up your emoji. Let us know where you are in the region. Sean from Antigua. Sandrino, tell us where you're from. I don't recognize the flag. Pardon me. Gail from Barbados. Samantha from Barbados. We have Bajans. We have Antiguans. We have... Who's to put that big Trini flag? Oh, Akeem. Okay, I got you. Welcome, folks. Welcome. And I'm going to just drop the first slide for the evening, which is basically our timeline. And then I'm going to take you through some introductory remarks, and then I'm going to hand over to our presenters. So our timeline for the evening, if you're new also, remember that to view a slide, all you need to do is to click on the slide in the chat. So we're in the introductions. I'll be introducing you to Hope McNeish and Rita Sukrit, who are going to be our presenters for the evening. And then we'll be going into a group activity, which they'll lead. We'll take a break at some point during the activity, probably when you're doing the activity at the tables. We'll come back and we'll debrief, and we'll talk about next steps. And the end of the evening, we'll close out with an open networking session where you'll get a chance to move around and talk and meet with people and network, right? Network with your camera, with your microphone, which is why we're here using Remo. So to give you an idea of what we've been doing behind the scenes to build up to this particular evening, we started off with surveys, we did interviews, we did focus groups, we did a whole bunch of stuff to gather information about the challenges that L&D is likely to face in the next 12 months. Because our contention is that there's a kind of a window going on for L&D right now. There's a window that's opened up, and that window isn't going to last forever. And what can be made of the opportunity that lies before us in terms of training and development. And this, of course, is a COVID-generated opportunity. So we didn't plan for it, but it is here. How do we make the most of it? And then tonight is our second step in the process to have our webinar tonight. And the third step is to launch something brand new called Carib L&D Forum. So what the heck is Carib L&D Forum? Well, as you may imagine, it's a part of Carib HR Forum. It will be an online discussion and interactive networking, learning, training, sharing, whatever we can get up to together as folks who have an interest in L&D. And you can actually join right now if you follow that link, but I'll drop the link later in the evening as well. You don't have to do it right now. And of course, as you may imagine, membership is free. Okay. And just to let you know some of what other things that are coming up really quickly, you probably know that we have a conference that's coming up in September. And guess what? We have a theme. So the website is being revamped from last year's conference, and our theme is carving out a new Caribbean workspace. Carving out a new Caribbean workspace. Caribbean workspace, right? So that brings to mind all kinds of images, but we, again, this idea that there's an opportunity that is before us, an opportunity to carve out a brand new space, and our conference and our webinars are all building up to taking advantage of kind of the opportunity, the miracle that we've been handed. Hi, Nashrun, good to see you. And today we have a sponsor between now and all the way up to the conference, actually. Mark Rim Compensation reports and surveys. They are once again one of our generous sponsors. As you probably know, membership in Caribbean HR Forum is free. Attendance at our virtual conference is also free for live attendance. And that's made possible by sponsors like Mark Rim. So take a look at that. You should be clicking on that. Well, you can't click on the link. So let me drop the link. I'm going to drop the link to their compensation survey. If you're interested in learning more, just go to that link that I just dropped in the chat, and you can actually sign up for a free download that they're offering right now. So that report is available. It covers 2018 to 2019. So you can go ahead and sign up and get that, and you learn much more about their services as well. So that's available immediately. So if your company is interested in doing any kind of compensation surveys, or it's serious about answering questions around how in the world do we take care of our people in terms of paying them enough so they don't go run off and join the competition, then check Mark Rim, click on that link, sign up, and they'll get in touch with you with respect to providing you the report and showing you how else you could participate in their survey. Okay, all kinds of goodies if you go down that, if you need that kind of service from them. Okay, and or for those of you who are on YouTube, okay, so I'm going to open up LinkedIn and I'm going to interact with you on LinkedIn. So here's a story. If you're listening in on YouTube, no, Remo doesn't work on a tablet, so you've got to use a laptop. Tamika, someone will ask you a couple of questions, see if we can solve the problem that you're having on your laptop, but it won't work on a tablet. So if you're on YouTube listening in, you could go to the YouTube link, which is on the landing page, the sign-up page that you came in on. If someone could drop the link to YouTube just in case they're having difficulty here on their laptop. But if you're on YouTube, we're going to have a chat. The chat is going to take place at that on that link that you're seeing right there. It's, let me read it off. It's bit.ly CHL&D chat, DD chat. Boy, that's a heck of a link, but I'm going to drop it in the chat. But if you're on YouTube, you won't actually see that. You'll have to actually type it in. And what it'll give you access to is the chat room on LinkedIn that we've set up. It's on the page that you may have signed up on LinkedIn, and I'll be there and I'll be taking you through some of the exercises that you'll be doing if you're going to be online, if you are here online with us on Remo. So except we're almost full on Remo. We have 41 people. Welcome, everybody. So let me introduce you to our presenters for the evening. So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce you to two exceptional L&D professionals from the region. They've been working for a couple of months, very, very hard on the topic of our evening. And I'm just really appreciative of the time and effort they've put in to get us to where we are tonight. So Hope Naknish is an OD facilitator and learning and development professional. She's a people management and behavioral skills trainer with extensive experience in both public and private sector. And as you'll hear, Hope is Jamaican. Rita Sukrit has consulted with global clients in various industries, helping them shape and foster workflow learning. She brings extensive experience in building, inspiring, and developing high-performing L&D teams. Rita is currently collaborating with the Canadian federal government. She's tuning in from Toronto to transform the country's benefits programs. She's tasked with digital transformation, building a corporate learning university, and leading a team of L&D professionals to develop cutting-edge solutions that address business and human needs. And Rita is a trainee who lives in Canada. So guys, I'm going to bring Rita and Hope up to join me, and then I'm going to disappear and I'm going to hand over to them. Guys, can you turn on your microphone and your cameras? It should automatically bring you up. Here is Rita, and there is Hope. And guys, I'm going to hand over to you. Thanks again.
Thank you, Francis. All right, I am just going to share my screen before we start. And can you, Hope, let me know if you can see this?
Yes, I'm seeing.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Francis. Hello and welcome to the Future of L&D in a Post-Pandemic World webinar. Hope and I really appreciate your time with us tonight, and we look so forward to discussing survey results that include executives investing in L&D, some of our biggest challenges, personal upskilling, and the future of L&D, just to name a few. Future Skills highlights global trends, foundational skills to thrive post-pandemic, and then how L&D professionals can evolve. For group activity, Hope will provide an overview of Jamboard, which we will use to answer one of 3 questions. Now, depending on which table you are seated, you'll discuss one question and post the responses directly on Jamboard. Jamboard will remain accessible after the webinar in case you're inspired, you want to return, and you want to add additional comments. We encourage that. But for tonight, we will conduct a very high-level debrief and then a more comprehensive review later on. So as Francis mentioned, we will break and then we'll return from the break and debrief that activity. I hope that sounds good to everyone. And what we're going to do now is pause for a second, and Hope and I want to open up with remarks. Let me just come back into Remo here.
Right.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about L&D profession and where things are today. And then Hope is going to take it a step further and discuss what's taking place, the shifts that are occurring, and the implications of L&D. Oh, it's like we've been working all day and now it's the end of the day. I can't speak. All right. L&D, just so you know, after the pandemic, it's not about learning. It's about the value we create for others. I'm going to repeat that statement because it's quite profound. L&D is not about learning. It's about the value we create for others. And the value is defined by the receiver, not the giver. That's not L&D, not managers, and certainly not HR or CEOs. It's the learner that receives that value. Now, stakeholders can be internal and external. Internal stakeholders are your learners, your managers, HR, CEOs, and external stakeholders are vendors and customers. Ask yourself, as an L&D person, how much value or what value can I bring to my organization? Ladies and gentlemen, during the pandemic, L&D professionals were busy adapting to the virtual work environment, leaving them very little time and bandwidth to experiment with new methodologies such as AI, artificial intelligence. Well, coming out of the pandemic means change, massive change. Another thing that's coming out is this discomfort zone. We had it when we launched into the pandemic, and we're going to be hit with it again, if not already in it. That means emotions are going to be flying at work. So we have been in a before pandemic where we were conducting mandatory training, compliance training, remedial skills training, and then we switched into tactical behavior because we had to deal with the pandemic. We had to deal with capacity building. But this pandemic, as we're coming out, means change. And what does that mean for us? Strategic input. So the new role of L&D, we are here to help individuals and organizations fulfill their potential. That is really the role of L&D. Remember, I said L&D is not about learning. It's about the value we create for others. So what can you do today and what can you do tomorrow? And how can you help that individual or organization get there? For our change leaders in the room or change management agents, think about the current state where we're in. And then we want to get to a future state. So we've got our current, our future, and this middle area is the change management strategy. That is exactly the same thing for L&D strategy. That window is our opportunity to reposition ourselves as a strategic partner in organizations and change the workplace capacity. So that's my opening comments. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Hope.
Right. Thank you very much, Rita. And I'll start off, my little scenario. I need a time management training team. Most of them are reports late. I need a strategic planning training program for my team because they have no idea where they're going. They have no vision. I need a communication training program for my team because they're not communicating with each other effectively. Does that sound familiar? Many learning and development professionals are functioning in an environment where they are being reactive rather than proactive. And so they end up in a role of taking orders for delivering specific types of training rather than being proactive enough to be totally conversant with what's going on in their organizations, to be able to determine what is needed even before they are asked, and to be able to identify what is really needed. Because when somebody says that I need a communication training program, that may not be what is needed. Or when they say I need a time management training program, that may not be what is needed. So L&D professionals in organizations need to be able to distinguish between development needs and facilitation needs, group facilitation needs, because sometimes what is needed is group facilitation to take people from point A to point B, jumping that Rita spoke about. What may be needed is coaching and mentorship. And what could be also needed is disciplinary action. Because when someone has the skills and knowledge to perform, but doesn't, it is not a training need. It is definitely not a training need at that point. So we have to be very specific. Training is not a panacea for all ills in the organization. So we have to be very clear what learning and development professionals are about. And of course, as Rita says, we are there to add value, right? To enable the employees within the organizations to add value and to participate in the achievement of the strategic plan that has been developed by the organization. And a couple of shifts. One of the shifts that is taking place now is a shift from outsourcing, right, which was taking place for a number of organizations that shifted to divesting themselves of certain skilled professionals and outsourcing the work to different types of agencies. Now that organizations are seeking to be more prudent in their spending for a number of reasons, because of the COVID pandemic, and also because of the recession that was occurring even outside and would have occurred even without the pandemic. Now, organizations have to be more prudent, therefore, in how they spend their budgets. And so they are recognizing a need to build skills internally. Right? So that is one shift that is taking place. And interesting, interestingly enough, Randstad Source, which is one organization that does research into what is needed, they have indicated that some of the things that are needed now that are critical needs, emotional intelligence, and you can see why, right? Adjusting to all the changes taking place during COVID-19 called for a lot of emotional intelligence, right? And there's a high need for that. Adaptability, flexibility, all of that is, we're now talking about AI, right? As one of the elements of emotional intelligence, adaptability intelligence. So that's also very important. And of course, communication and problem solving, in addition to the specialized skills, because based upon the new ways of doing things, there are specialized skills that need to be learned. All right. And so there's that shift from outsourcing to building skills internally. And also, generally, emotional intelligence has really loomed large again, right? It was the big thing once, and it's going to loom large again because of our recent experience. And because as organizations grow and develop, right, there are demands on the people who are interacting with each other. And, we have to be more aware of the impact, the emotional impact of what is taking place around us, and to be able to bring out the emotions that are really, that really complement effort that we are trying to achieve. So I will stop there for now. We'll talk some more about some of the shifts that are taking place, but we want to get right into our presentation. But there are lots of major shifts that are taking place that learning and development needs to, adjust to, adapt to. And not only that, learning and development needs to be a leader in that process. Thank you.
Thanks, Hope. All right, just so the audience know what we're doing, we decided to use PowerPoint, Hope and myself. So when I turn on PowerPoint, I can't see my camera. So if it's all right and I have your permission, I'm going to turn off my camera and I'll come back on when we get to the activity. But Hope will be monitoring the chat and will be responding and letting me know what's happening. So just stay with us. I'm just going to launch PowerPoint and we're going to get back into the presentation. Okay, and oops. No. Hope, I think this is for you.
Okay. All right. And here we just want to share an overview of the respondents to the survey that some of you perhaps participated in. If you did participate in the survey, you could perhaps raise hands. I don't know if that's something that you can do. Otherwise, well, we hope that most of you have participated in the survey. And what you will see is that 25.8% of the persons who participated learning and development consultants, right, for external clients. So they are outside the organization, right? And with that scene that I created in the beginning, if a development consultant outside of the organization is a recipient of instructions or requests from the learning and in the organization, you can see what's happening, because whatever kind of reactivity that they're expressing to what's happening in their organization, that is what they're sending out to the learning and development consultant. So when they make a request to the learning and development consultant and they get the question like, okay, so what is happening that indicates that there's a need for this specific type of training? Has training needs analysis been done, and that sort of thing? And it's very difficult to get the kind of response that guides you in delivering the service that, and of course on the internal learning and development professional to be able to do the necessary diagnosis in order to properly guide us as to what we need to deliver, and or engage us in the process of doing the diagnosis as well. And 37.9% are persons who work for a company or work for a company as an L&D professional. Okay, so the larger slice of the pie are L&D professionals within organizations. And a small slice are persons who work for a company but intend to become an L&D. So they're in transition. Some persons are in transition and they expect to make that transition over the next 12 months. And of course, 18.2% worked for a company as a human resource practitioner, right? They are working for as human resource practitioners. So that gives an idea of the perspectives that were brought to bear on the responses to the questionnaire. And I just want to also just point out before I to Rita, that the majority of employees are now preferring to work from home or have some kind of hybrid work arrangement. And this has some implications for learning and development. And as a matter of fact, Harvard Business Review, Harvard's Business School, a study where they identified that 81% of employees don't want to go back to the office, prefer a hybrid schedule. I have recently started a survey, and a pattern that is consistent with this trend locally. And 76.9% of the respondents so far to this survey are indicating that they would want to have a hybrid work. They're opting for a hybrid work arrangement, and 60% of them believe that they have been more productive at home. So all of this has implications for the shifts. These are the shifts taking place, and this is what we have to straddle in delivering work, learning, and development in the organization.
Okay. I'm really glad you mentioned Harvard Business Review and the working from home and the hybrid solution, because not only is that happening where you are, but it's happening everywhere globally. So that's a really good connector. Shall I continue, Herb?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. That is a really good segue into the future skills of L&D. Your survey results reveals I'll just highlight a couple of them. Keeping current with trends. Many of you mentioned e-learning, online, and virtual learning. But remember, when you're doing online or virtual e-learning, it needs to be as engaging, and if not more so than in person. Because it's really hard to keep and hold that attention of learners virtually. So keeping in mind, Hope mentioned it, I've mentioned it, AI, artificial intelligence, analytics data as well. They will come back into play. Because of the pandemic, it's been put on the back burner, but fear not, that's going to resurface coming back, and companies and L&D and HR people are going to be using it to identify skill gaps and knowledge gaps in learners. Also, CEOs and leaders will be using AI to determine and assess future leaders within the company, so high potentials. In addition to your list here, I really want to add 3 items. I want to give you something to consider, to think about. The first one is tied into the third bullet, which is designing and developing programs and courses. When we design and develop courses in L&D, there has to be a methodology or proven, structure or format that works. I know many of you probably have heard of ADDIE, and some of you have heard of others because there's so many. There's SAM, there's ARC, there's hundreds out there. And no one is perfect, but combination works well. During the pandemic, this one stood out, and it stood out at a global scale. It's designing for the 5 moments of need. And we want to introduce this to you Hope and I tonight. The 5 moments of need are, the first one is you're designing something for the first time. So this is brand new. You need information. The second moment is you want to learn more about something or a topic. The third is applying or remembering, trying to remember something. The fourth is when something goes wrong, what do I do? And the fifth is when change occurs, such as the pandemic, we quickly adapted. So 1, for the first time, and 2 is to learn more. Relationship to formal instruction. That means it's full-on training, whether it's e-learning, whether it's classroom, but it's full-on instructional training. But the bottom 3, which is application or remembering, something goes wrong and change, that's for performance support. And we all know performance support comes in the form of job aids, quick reference guides, YouTube, educational videos. It could be anything, cue cards, it could be any number of things. So when you take that into consideration, it's a very simple structure, but it's so effective. And that's just a very high level. I mean, there's methodologies in how to design for that. Now, L&D is comprised of 5 branches. One is the instruction needs analysis. Second is the instructional design, which is why I wanted to mention the 5 moments of need. 3 is facilitation, the delivery, whether it's online, face-to-face, blended. 4 is supporting the transfer of knowledge. And Hope mentioned it, and I'm going to keep mentioning it. You're going to hear it a few times throughout the evening. And 5th is evaluation. And evaluation is not just evaluating courses, but evaluating learners. And you mentioned ROI many times, so we're going to come back to evaluation again several times. So the second thing I would like to talk about is learning in the flow of work, because it complements the designing for 5 moments of need. Learning in the flow of work means information at my fingertips. I just wrapped up a project, and I kid you not when I tell you this. This company is so archaic in its documentation strategy and how they store and house documentation. And when the pandemic hit, nothing was digitized, and it was like dog's breakfast. It was a complete mess. So the days I would have to come in to find information, I literally would have to set aside a couple of hours and dig deep, go. And sometimes I wouldn't even get what I wanted, and I would just give up. I'd call the vendor and says, you know what, I need this. It was really frustrating. So when you're designing in the flow of work, one click, single click access to that job aid, to that learning, to that e-learning, to that video, it should only, that's how quick and dirty it has to be. It needs to be contextual, bite-sized, so really short and sweet, and current. It needs to be kept up to date. There's nothing more frustrating than giving me data that's not going to serve my purpose. And the last piece of I'd like to leave you with is a culture, creating a culture of curiosity. When people are curious, they want to learn. Trust me, they absolutely want to learn. And inclusion, because it's such a big thing that's come out of George Floyd in the US, diversity, inclusion, equity, and then creating that lifelong learning culture. So these are the 3 things I would like to add to the future skills that you've already created a very, very good skill list here. I'm going to go to the next slide and hand it over to Hope.
Okay. And here we're looking at what you had to say about stakeholder support for learning and development. What is actually being experienced in the organization with regard to stakeholders support. And we see, first of all, that the top lead, that the perception is of 22.1%, they have top leadership support for learning and development. And a larger slice was HR, that they have 24.4% of them see that their strongest support is coming from HR. Because the question is, where do you get the strongest support for learning and development? And we also see that 21.6% of the persons thought that staff, the actual learners, right, are the strongest supporters of learning and development. And that ties right back in with what Rita said when we opened, that in fact, what we have to do is deliver value to the recipient, the customers of learning and development. 14.6% of the respondents felt that supervisors were strong supporters. So you can see it's diminishing in terms of the different levels of support. And and of course, we didn't exactly specify what other meant, but 16.4% felt that their support came from other areas, but it didn't actually show up in the survey what were those other areas that they thought. But that's an overview of, the perception from the survey of stakeholders' support. And now what we're going to look is shift to the other slide where we talk about influencing executive buy-in to learning and development. Okay, because what we would like to see is more persons. It would be great if 100% of the persons could say, responding to this survey, could have said that their strongest support was from from top management in terms of learning and development. And so we need to look at the positioning of learning and development professionals within organizations. How do we actually, because the most important thing for learning and development professionals to do is to take their seat at the table. And how important is it, therefore, in order for them to do this, how important is it for them to be knowledgeable about their industry? Should they only be knowledgeable about learning and development, or should they be knowledgeable about every single aspect of their organization, every single aspect of the industries that they represent? If we do not become very conversant, if we are not knowledgeable about our industries, then respect can we garner from our top management because we're not speaking the same language? And the next question I ask is, should L&D professionals be indispensable to strategic decision making in the organization? Should they be indispensable to strategic decision? Remember, learning and development represents, right, and innovation for the organization, right? So learning and development should definitely be indispensable. Learning and development has to step outside of its comfort zone and become involved in all the major discussions taking place. Seek to be involved, even if you're excluded, right? Turn up to the table and participate and be able to add value. And I'm speaking from experience because when I held that kind of responsibility within an organization, that's what I had to do. Otherwise, I could not perform my role and I would not be respected in the organization. So I had to step out of my comfort zone and put myself in even uncomfortable positions by inserting myself into meetings that where strategic decision making was taking place, where I could add my input and also where I could learn the think senior managers of the organizations and recognize what their different or companies needed, because this was a group of companies. Learn what they needed so that I could offer solutions that would be beneficial to them and assist them to achieve what they want. So learning and development professionals, we have to step out of our comfort zone and we have to take our. And the next question I have is, should learning and development professionals develop the expert facilitate strategic planning? Of course. We are supposed to be driving that strategic planning process within the organization, facilitating the discussions at the different levels, right? So we have to develop the expertise with strategic planning is. We have to understand the process, and we also have to be able to bring in experts from the organization, expert facilitators that can guide the process and take it to the results, create the vision that is possible for and create the plan to make it happen. And the next question is, how do we ensure that L&D is incorporated into the plan? By being there, by being present, and by raising the learning and development issues every step of the way. Don't allow them to be sidelined. If we want to do this, this is what it means for L&D. We have to be raising those. Don't wait for them to develop their strategic plan and get to a point of implementation and recognize that there is a gap. We are to be there pointing it out and making sure that it is incorporated in the strategic plan. And at what point do you determine how ROI will be measured? And ROI on investment. So at what point do we determine how ROI will be measured? ROI needs to be, how we are going to measure it needs to be determined at that developmental stage, when we are developing the strategic plan and when we are designing our training programs or learning and development programs. And of course, the learning and development programs are many faceted, different types of strategies depending on what the need is. But that must be built in. And the next question, how do you build consistent messaging and influencing skills with the various stakeholders? And of course, we have to be constantly, again, be integrated into all of the discussions, into the flow, and we have to bring value. We have to be part of the organizational think tank. Right? We need to be there learning the different processes within the organization so we can speak to them in concrete ways and we can be part of the process of driving innovation in every department, in every area of the organization. So we have to, and we will be able to influence when they develop confidence in our ability and they recognize that we know what we are talking about. Do we know what we're talking about? We have the skills to deliver, right? Mm-hmm. So influencing executive buy-in, we have to get, we have to win the confidence at every level, including at the executive level.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow, I was so intently listening. Very good, very cool. Thanks, Hope.
Yes.
What are the challenges that we're faced right now? Here is what your survey results show. And top of the list is budget cuts. And exactly what Hope was just talking about is the return on investment and a whole bunch of the other things in between.
Rito.
Yes, yes.
Because I'm getting an error message that we're unable to pick her up.
Can you pick up who?
Rito.
Can you hear me?
I can hear Rito.
Oh, it's just me. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
That's okay. I know you just want to come into the conversation and